of the Alter Rebbe, or just?
No, we were learning it for the last
You were learning it.
We got it over.
It's all right. It is a different mimer, and there's a serious chiddush. And this mimer is a big chiddush. Hi, Ari. There are two gentlemen here whose names I don't know, even though yours I definitely don't. Pinchas. Pleased to meet you.
I was here in the summer.
I know. I was just going to say you look familiar, but I still don't know your name, and so I'm not going to. Shimon from
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Okay. Bruchim Abayim. What do you mean, oi, Doc? What does that mean?
The Phillies.
I hate the Mets as much as he hates the Phillies.
You've talked about this already. I see. Okay, the saying there. Well, what can I say?
I love American sports drama. I really do.
I think nobody starts canceling because everybody just feels bad for them.
Okay. Wait, how do I do this so that it's? I'm sorry. There we go. Is that better? No, that's not. I'm sorry for betraying with this. I just haven't had this for a while, and it's not really.
There's the triple A team.
Look at this. Do you believe this? His AAA team could probably beat your major league team.
They're all ganging up on me.
Pinchas, where are you from?
Russia, Canada, Japan.
Wow.
Russia, Canada, and Japan.
He's in Vancouver.
Vancouver? For how long?
12 years.
12
Wow.
years. Wow. I was just there for 2 days. Didn't wear a coat the whole time. Nothing
Wow,
in Vancouver.
really?
Vancouver in the winter, it's the best.
Wow.
I took a coat, I didn't wear it.
How's the weather?
Beautiful. Gray skies, fresh air, little tiff-toof now and then, little drops of rain now and then, 12 degrees. 12 is what, 50 degrees.
12
Gorgeous.
Yo,
No, 50.
warm.
Well, it's warm.
No, I'm saying like in Celsius. It's
Yeah, it was great.
It's like here.
Unbelievable. It's the winter's like here, no? The winter's like here.
You're right on the sea. You get like no winter. That makes
It's
sense.
wonderful, wonderful. New York's on the sea, they get a winter. L'chaim,
The
l'chaim.
wind
Okay.
blows from the other way.
The wind blows from the other way. There's always,
Wind
a
blows
reason.
from
There's
the
always a
continent.
reason when you say something that
Yeah, of
doesn't make
course.
sense. You can
You
always
got it,
explain it.
I'm still waking up.
Okay, I should erase all this, right? But it doesn't matter. No, they'll get an idea of what's really going on.
Do we want that?
All those people in Zimbabwe, where are they? Bangladesh.
Bangladesh.
Wherever they are.
Bangladesh.
There's been a riot in Bangladesh because there hasn't been a shirt for 3 weeks.
It happens.
I just want you guys to know that if you ask a question, don't be nervous about asking a question. It's no problem. But there are 3 million people in Bangladesh who watch this live, so if you get nervous, so don't worry about it. Okay, let's go. So the basic explanation of the idea of Leisa Mishakela is not something that we have to worry about because you were looking in the Alter Rebbe. This is a very, very famous mimer of the Rebbe. As you can see, it's from Shabbos Parshas Mishpatim Tafshin Yud Beis. Now the Rebbe became Rebbe officially a year before this. Right? This is Mevarchin Chodesh Adar Tafshin Yud Beis. The Rebbe became Rebbe officially in the Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Shvat, Tafshin Yud Aleph, a year before. They say, I was not there, I was not yet born. They say that there are a number of Chassidim, meaning Chassidim who we know, whose fathers or grandfathers or great-grandfathers, depending on who you know, heard this mimer of the Rebbe, and this is what made them Chassidim. Right? This is what, meaning they were Chassidim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and there was a new Rebbe, and they were Chassidim of the Rebbe, but they were Chassidim of the Frierdiker Rebbe. I mean, we don't know what this means to have to choose a new Rebbe, right? To relate to a new Rebbe. It can't be an easy thing. You're Chassidim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and all of a sudden the Frierdiker Rebbe passes away, and there's a new Rebbe. Now, you've known this gentleman. You've seen him around. He's been an important person. The Rebbe's been talking, and the Frierdiker Rebbe talked about our Rebbe a lot the last year or two of the Frierdiker Rebbe's life, seemingly preparing the Chassidim for the transition, but who knows? But that being said, it can't be an easy thing. And this mimer was the Makeh B'Patish for a number of Chassidim. Moshe Brook was one of them. It's another famous Chassid whose name just escaped me. But if you know any Brooks, there's a lot of Brooks. Chaim Shalbrook from Northridge, so his great grandfather. So he became a chassid as a result of this mimer. Also, Rav Mendel said something very interesting about this mimer. This was the only mimer of the Rebbe that the Yidden in Russia had. This was the mimer that they had in Russia. And this is the mimer they learned, and 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 they learned, because they didn't have anything else. This mimer somehow made it to Russia, the Soviet Union, and so the Chassidim had this mimer, and this is the mimer they were learning. They all knew it backwards and forwards because they were learning this. This was the only mimer they had from our Rebbe. For a while, exactly when that changed, I don't know, but for a very long time, this was the mimer they had. Okay, so now we can go through the first page relatively quickly. The first page is just pshat in the pasuk. You know the pasuk because you haven't learned it yet in Chittis. The pasuk is these two psukim that are the source of this mimer are the last pasuk in Shishi and the first pasuk in Shvi. Right, Loisim mishakela, that pasuk is the first pasuk in Shvi. Right, the seventh aliyah of this week's parsha. Now, the mimer, of course, is called Loisim mishakela, even though it's based on two psukim, and Loisim mishakela is the second of those two psukim. Loisim mishakela v'kada b'artzecha. There should not be a mishakela. So you know what a mishakela is. A mishakela is a woman who mourns the loss of a child. That can either be an unborn child, meaning a miscarriage, or a child. Yaakov Avinu says about himself, Shechol shechalti. I'm mourning the loss of a child, referring to Yosef. There should not be a mishakela, someone who mourns the loss of a child, vakara, or a barren woman. Why mishakela comes before barren woman, the Rebbe does not deal with it all in the mimer, so we won't. Right? But it is interesting. You would think it would first be a kara, barren, and then someone who does give birth but loses the baby, right? Either as a child or in utero. Bartzecha, in your land, es mispar yamecha male, the number of your days I will fill. That's the pasuk. No clear connection between the second half of the pasuk and the first half of the pasuk, but we'll see the pasuk before, and then we'll understand this pasuk in context. Hine mikra zeh, this verse, hu behemshech, is a continuation l'masha kosav lifnei zeh, to that which is written before this, the last pasuk in Shishi in this week's parsha. You should serve God. He will bless your bread and your water. And I will remove sickness from your midst. Okay? So in that context, we now see how the psukim fit together. So let's first read the second one quoted in the mimer, which is the first one in the Torah. And then we'll read our first pasuk in the mimer, which is the second one. So first start in the second line. We're going to go to the third line, then back to the first, and see these two psukim in order. You should serve God. What's going to happen if you serve God, evidently? He'll bless your bread and your water. And I will remove sickness from your midst. There will not be women who lose children or are barren in your land. And you'll live a long life. So these are promises. As a result of the Aveda, there will be these promises in Gashmias. And we'll see that these promises, very quickly, and we've seen this already, these promises refer to Banei Chai Mezoni, children, health, and a livelihood, which are the three brachas in Gashmias. There isn't anything else, right? In Gashmias, you make your living, you're healthy, and you have children. Those are the three brachas in Gashmias. Now, within the context of making a living, there can be all sorts of other stuff that you might think you have to buy with the money you make as a living. Okay, but that's all under mezoni, parnasa. Umamshich, he continues. Shal yedei zeh, now the Rebbe is looking at the order of the pasuk again. Mamshich, and it continues the pasuk. Shal yedei zeh, by virtue of the v'avadetem esavai lokechem, loisigam ken mishakela, there also will not be women who are barren, women who lose children, and people will live a long life. V'hiskir kan, and the Rebbe says it right away, and it's mentioned here of Tochal Gimel and Yonim. There's a promise regarding three things: the Banei Chai Mezoni, children, health, and a livelihood. Shetia bev, and now the Rebbe says something very important, right? That you might not pay attention to now, but it's going to be the answer to a question at the bottom of the page, right? Shetia bem habrocha beribui ubahafloga beyeser. That there'll be a bracha in these things with ribui, meaning a lot, ubafloga means exaggerated, a tremendous amount. Tremendous bracha. Uberach es lachma gves meimecho. Now the Rebbe is going to go through all three of these as they appear in the pasuk. Uberach, he'll bless lachma gves meimecha, your bread and your water. Hu inyan mezoni, that is a livelihood. Umadgish bekosav, and it emphasizes in the pasuk uberach, a bracha, meaning not only will there be sustenance, it'll be a sustenance of bracha. Hainu, sheloizu belvad shem mezoni kefiyam mitzdarech, that not only will this sustenance be in line with that which is mitzdarech, from the word sarich, that which is necessary. Ela oidzais, furthermore, shetir bezeh teisefes bracha. There'll be an additional bracha, mezoni ravicha, lots of sustenance. Umamshich benegel l'chayir, and also it continues relative to health. First it says, "Vasirosi machle mikirbecho," I will remove sickness from your midst. V'yaseiru mizeh, and furthermore, at the end of the second pasuk, es mispar yamecho maleh, the number of your days I will fill. Meaning, not only will you be healthy, you'll live a long life, and not only will you live a long life, you'll live a healthy long life. Because theoretically, a person could live a long time but be sick the whole time, or a person could be very healthy but pass away at a young age. Right? Shezeu inyan rikas yomim. This is long days. In other words, a long life. Right? So a healthy long life. V'chein, similarly, b'negei labani. So too relative to children. Omer leisa mishakela v'akara. That there won't be mishakela v'akara, two different types of women. Shezuya brocha de birchas, zuya brocha de leidus banim. This is the brocha of giving birth to children. Firstly, which is hashlila, the negation, the akara, of the notion of being barren. You're not going to be barren, which means you'll have children. Vakim shalem, and the continued existence of those children. Hashlila, which is the negation of the notion of mishakela, someone who mourns the passing of a child. Now, obviously the Torah is written in many different contexts. The Torah has been around for a long time. We, Baruch Hashem, live in a time when the idea of losing a child is very rare and therefore more painful, right? Very few people who lived in the first 5,600 years of the world's history did not lose a child. How could anybody live? I mean, the average age of people, if you look up the statistics, was about 55, 60. Now, if you look at people's ages, most people live to be 70, if they made it to 20. They said to make it to 20. A lot of people didn't make it to 20. Because any disease, you got pneumonia, so you died, right? If you got, all sorts of things which are fairly innocuous for us, cause death in children up until, I'm being generous, I think, if I say 150 years. It's probably much less than that. When did antibiotics show up?
30s, 40s.
30s, 40s, so that's 80 years. Right? So until antibiotics, any kid who got a serious virus, any serious bacterial infection, might not make it. So mishakela is a very serious bracha. Right? Now it's obvious it's always a serious bracha, but less relevant today simply because Baruch Hashem, it's very rare for someone to lose a child today, which makes it more difficult because I would imagine the fact that every single family in the community had lost a child or two probably allowed for that to be something less difficult. Still obviously difficult. So that not only will there be children, but they will live. Ubaif, and in such a way, she's kaim l'erech yamim, that they will live for long days, gam la'ezik nasei, also into their old age. Now, why are we saying that? Well, look at Yaakov Avinu. How old was Yaakov Avinu when the brothers were trying to convince him that he should go down to Mitzrayim? That they should go down to Mitzrayim, not he yet. That they should go down to Mitzrayim and get food. Right? So the first time he wanted them to go. The second time they had to convince him because he didn't really want them to go because they would have to take Binyamin, right? Because that's what the nasty gentleman in Mitzrayim said, who we knew was Yosef, but they didn't. Right? Okay. So Yosef said you have to bring Binyamin, and Shimon was in jail. He wasn't really in jail. He was let out right away. How Shimon didn't know what was going on, I don't know. But anyway, that part I've never figured out. Like, why did this guy let me out of jail and hang out in Farbrengen with me for the last couple of months? But anyway, that I've never quite understood. But okay, they didn't understand it was Yosef. So how old was Yaakov? He says the words, Shachol Shachalti. That's why we're bringing it here. Yaakov says, I'm a mishakel. And yet he was not 40 years old. How old was he? Now you should know this. You should know this, meaning it's knowable.
Was it 120?
120, okay, wasn't quite 120. He says how old he is. When he's talking to Paro, how old does he say he is? 130. He says, I'm 130 years old, right? And it's been hard and bitter. He lives how many years in Mitzrayim? 17 years in Mitzrayim, Gematria Toiv. And what age was Yaakov when he passed away? 147. So you can do the math that way also. But it happens to be that he says beferish, that he was 130 when he's talking to Paro. So this is a few months before that. So he's 129, 130 years old. And what does he say? Kafisha Metzina b'Yaakov Avinu. As we find by Yaakov Avinu, Shegam la'ez ziknasi, even when he was an old man. So now if you reach 130, it might be reasonable to assume that one of your children might pass away, because that child could pass away at the age of 90. Right? But yet he still, now Yosef was much younger, but he still said, right? When he thought that it was lacking one of his children, Amar vani kasher shechalti, as I'm in a state of shchol. In this country, unfortunately, they talk about mishpachat hashchol, the family, the group of people who've lost soldiers in battle. It's called mishpachat hashchol. Also, the people who've lost people in terrorist attacks, right? Family members. Okay, so that's mishakela. So that means that the child must live a long time, because the state of shchol can even be in old age. And relative to all of this, it says lo sihiye, right? Lo sihiye mishakela. So now, what does that mean? That can either be a command, don't be, or it can be a promise, you will not be. Right? So which is it? Now you'll say, well, I don't understand. How can I be commanded not to be barren? Well, that means I'm commanded to do everything in my power to have children. If not blessed with children, I'm not blessed with children. But if not I, one. But a person does everything in their power. So there can certainly be such a commandment. Even though in the context of the pasuk, it does seem to be a promise. We'll see. The Rebbe ultimately learns it as both. Ubezemer lo sihiye. There are two different ways of explaining this. B'lashon sivui, a language of command, and b'lashon avtacha, language of promise. Kafisha metzina b'dugmasa b'kamam, as we've seen in a number of places. Hainu sivui, there's a command, leisa mishakela v'kara, right? Meaning do all that you can to have children and to take care of those children. Es tarnit zayin, you must not be. Tarnit zayin kan, you must not be mishakela v'kara. Tar is must. Vavtocha shalei sihiye mishakela v'kara, or a promise that you will not be, is vetnit zayin kan, you will not be. Vet is future tense. You will not be mishakela v'kara. Hainu shekasher adam talui bei, when a person does everything dependent on him, shalei sihiye mishakela v'kara, not to be lacking children, or there's children chas v'shalom should not live a long life. Azai then gam mavticha Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu promises him shaloi siyah mishakela v'kara. Do everything in your power and be able to make sure that that's what happens. V'tanai l'kol zeh, and the condition for all this, hu k'fi shemakdim b'kosav v'avadim v'zavai lokechem, you should serve Hakadosh Baruch Hu. You should serve Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, end. Now, the Rebbe is going to ask a question and give a very incomplete answer to that question. Well, I mean an answer that we won't really understand, but that's okay. We're not going to try to understand it because we can't. And you'll see what the question is, and then you'll understand why we can't understand the question, why we can't understand the answer. Even though the Rebbe does give an answer, we'll still won't understand the mechanics of the answer. Because the Rebbe asked a very, very interesting question. And it's certainly, what we just read is counterintuitive to everything we've experienced in our lives, because there are all sorts of people who serve God very, very seriously and yet don't seem to be privy to all this bracha. Right? So, how does this work? And then the Rebbe asks that question not based on our experience, because our experience is not necessarily a good meter to judge whether or not what the Torah is saying is true or not. There's another idea in the Torah which shows that this seems to be problematic, and that's a real question. Even though relative to these three things specifically, children, health, and a livelihood, Amru Chazal said, Shalav beschusa talya milsa. This is not based on our merit, meaning not based as a response to our avodah, to what we do down here. We merit this. Ela b'mazla talya milsa. It's based on mazel. Mazel means something that comes from above, Seder Ishtalshlu, something that comes from above, that is beyond our ability to comprehend. Some people have the mazel, some people don't have the mazel. The Eibishter makes these decisions, and it's not necessarily based on what a person's doing down here in Olam Hazeh. And that's what we see. So then how can it possibly be? Now, Chazal say that. So we're not really asking a question on the pasuk. The pasuk is the pasuk, and Chazal are Chazal. Chazal have to learn the pasuk doesn't have to learn Chazal. That being said, Chazal say that these three things are not based on Avodah, and yet our pasuk says these three things are based on Avodah. So how do you understand that? And the Rebbe is going to give a one-line answer, which we don't understand, and you'll see why. So first the Rebbe says, Bechinas HaMazel, the level of Mazel, she'einin yineschus nagei Hashem, that our notion of merit doesn't reach that place. Now what that's going to mean ultimately is a level... And we're going to learn about this in the Mimer. What level of reality does our Avodah affect? And what level of reality is beyond the effect of our Avodah? You know, when you and I do something down here, what levels of reality are actually affected by that? And what levels of reality perhaps are too transcendent and therefore are not affected by that? So that's Chus and Mazel. So Mazel is a level of reality beyond that which our Avodah can affect. It seems to be. So then this isn't based on schus, merit. It's based on mazel. Mikol makim. Now the Rebbe says, in 8 words, the answer. And we don't understand the mechanics of it. Mikol makim ribuya bracha bezeh. The abundance of bracha in this, talui binyan avodah dafka, is based on avodah. How's that work? What if you don't have the basic mazel for children in the first place? So then how does ribui depend on your avodah? Right? Don't know. And we're not going to discuss it because we don't know and we can't know. So it's just a waste of time to talk about it. Okay? So I apologize for leaving you in the lurch, but I mean, okay? Now, we'll see whether or not we can actually answer that once we get further in the Mimer. Some people say yes, some people say no. Okay, that's the whole first page of the Mimer. That's the nigla. That's the nigla of the Mimer. Pshat in the pasuk. That's all it is. Now the Rebbe asks a very, very powerful question. V'tzarech lahavin ma'u inyan avodah. It says, v'vadatem esavai lokechem. The Torah uses that word a lot. Chassidim use that word a lot. Avodah. You talk about Avodah all the time. Avodah is Hashem. Right? All the time. Right? So why do we use that word? Because that word, as the Rebbe is going to show, seems to not necessarily properly describe the relationship between us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, as we'll see. But tzarich lahavin ma'u inyan avoda. The Rebbe is going to ask two questions relative to avoda in this paragraph. Shal zeh nemar, that relative to this it says, v'avadetem es havai Elokeichem. You should serve God. The l'cha'ura, at first glance. Klola se'inyan, the basic reality, the avoda sa'eved, la'adonai, the service of a servant to his master. Shayach rak be'eved va'adon lamat, is only relevant to a master and a servant, a servant and a master below. Why? She'eved yochel lahoisiv shleimus etzel ha'adon, that the eved is able to increase the wholeness of the adon, because the eved is able to do things that the adon can't do. Now, the adon could do those things, but then he couldn't do other things, right? So the adon could certainly work on the floor of the factory at the Ford Motor Company and put this screw into the wheel, but then he couldn't sit in the executive offices and plan out the future, ideas of Ford Motor Company, right? So he needs all those people to do all that stuff for him so that he can do what he wants to do, which is run the company. And without those people, he can't run the company, right? They make only a few cars if there was only one guy there, right? Okay, so all of those avadim, now we call them ovdim, but say the same root, right? All those workers, so those workers are extremely necessary for the adon. Now he's a real adon. He can fire the workers if he wants, right? He's definitely the master. He's in charge, right? But he needs them. That even though he is an adon, v'adon amiti, and a true adon, which doesn't necessarily apply as powerfully to the head of Ford Motor Company because he's got the United Auto Workers, right, that are going to limit his adnut to a certain degree. But, he does have a lot of power. Mikol makom, yesh gam inyanim shechasedim etzlo. There are things lacking by him. V'zeu avedus eved, and this is the service of the eved. What does the eved do? What do the workers do in that company? L'malis machsede, to fill that which he's lacking, l'hashlim esrtzainer, to fulfill his will. He wants to make motor cars. He also wants a division that's going to design motor cars. He wants a division that's going to sell motor cars. So he needs all sorts of people to help him do this because he can't do this alone. So they're helping him do what he wants done. And without them, he's lacking tremendously. As a matter of fact, he's lacking completely. He can't make it happen. Shal yedei zeh, by virtue of this, the eved, or in the context of the mashal, we're using the oved, the worker, who mashlim es ha'adon. He's bringing the other into a state of shleimus, of wholeness. Umizeh muvan. From this is also understand. Gam shal yedei zeh nasa tesef shleimus gam etzal eved ha'eved. Obviously, the eved is also being elevated by virtue of this because the eved is fulfilling a certain function. So he himself is being elevated. But relative to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Kevin she'iu shleimusa dekula, since he is the wholeness of all, meaning Kadosh Baruch Hu is in a state of absolute wholeness, absolute perfection, not lacking. Ain't a movement, it's not understood. Ech shayach sham, how is it relevant to Kadosh Baruch Hu? Inyan aveda. Why do we use that word to describe our relationship to Kadosh Baruch Hu? It might describe our part of it, if you want to be generous, that we're the eved, we're the one doing the work. Okay, but the relationship of an eved to an adon is that they need each other. The Eibishter does not need us in any way, shape, or form. He can do whatever he wants done without us. The fact that he wants us to do it is really quite amazing for us. It's not necessary for him. Okay, so then why is that the word used to describe our relationship with him? Because it doesn't aptly describe the relationship. Because Eved Adon is a certain relationship that can't be understood in terms of our relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what's Aveda B'chalal? That's the first question. Why is what we do called Aveda? Why? Now, that word means something. Why isn't it just vasisem es mitzvosai, which it says in a number of places? Do my mitzvahs. Okay, well, it's all over. Right? Just say that. When you do his mitzvahs. Why avadatem? Ula avdoi, to serve him. What does that mean? Gam tzarich lahavin, we also have to understand. Shabinyan zeh, this idea itself. Matzinu stiris b'divrei Chazal. We found contradictions in the words of Chazal. The Rebbe is going to bring both Chazal and Psukim, which seem to contradict each other. Delifamim, sometimes, Matzinu, we have found, she'inyan aveda einu nagei l'mayla, that our aveda does not affect above. So what we do has no effect above. K'di'is of a medrash, quite a wild medrash, heavy medrash. It's just, the Rebbe is going to explain it in an absolutely wondrous way, a few pages down the road, but it's really an amazing medrash. The medrash says, medrash Tanchuma, v'chi ichbas leila Kadosh Baruch Hu, does a Kadosh Baruch Hu care? L'misha sheichet mina tzavar and misha sheichet mina erev. If someone shechs from the tzavar, which is the neck, which is kosher shchita, or misha sheichet mina erev, or someone shechs in the back of the neck, which is not kosher shchita. So the Eibshter care. Loi nitnu a mitzvahs el l'tzad ben esabriyas. The mitzvahs were given only to purify the creations. That's a really heavy statement. I thought HaKadosh Baruch Hu does care. Well, evidently not, according to Chazal. Well, we'll see. HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares whether you shech this way or that way? Right? The mitzvahs were given to elevate us. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, is giving us an envelope with $1 million. You don't want to take the envelope. So don't take the envelope. Why does that bother the Eibshter? You want to be a dummy and not take the envelope, so don't take the envelope. I'm giving you $1 million. Here. You don't want it, so don't want it. Oh my goodness gracious! Oh, I'm so upset. What have you done to me? You haven't done anything to me. Right? You lost out. I didn't lose out. We'll see what that means. That's quite an astounding idea. I know. Shekol inyan. It's a Maimer Chazal. It's in a Medrash Tanchuma. Rabbi Tanchum was a Talmud of Rav Huna. Medrash Tanchum was written by it was compiled by Rabbi Tanchum. It was a Talmud of Rav Huna, who you've run into in the Gemara. Hainu shekol inyan of mitzvahs. The whole notion of mitzvahs, eina ela bishvil letzad ben sabriyus, is only to purify creations, meaning elevate us. Aval ein zenagei l'mayla, but it doesn't affect above. Well, okay. Now I was going to bring a pasuk which, if any of you have ever been in the house of a bar mitzvah boy, so you'll hear him saying this pasuk over and over again because it's in the bar mitzvah mimer. K'mefurish b'kara, as it says in a pasuk. Im chatasa, if you did a sin, matifel boy, what have you done to him? V'rabu psha'echa, and the multitudes of your iniquities. Mataseloi, what have you done to him? Im tzedakta, if you did something righteous, matitenloi, what are you giving to him? Iyov. Who else? Right? Okay. It's in Sefer Iyov. Meaning a person might, you can certainly imagine the person, right, it's obviously not a healthy thing to do, but the person who has the idea that if they do this Aveira, so they're really going to show a Kadosh Baruch Hu who's boss. Right? I'll show him who's boss. Right? I'm not going to bench. Ha! Right? Okay. I understand. It's like that kid, there's someone holding the kid from his head and he's trying to hit the person, right? So I'm going to show Kadosh Baruch Hu's boss, right? That's obviously a rather silly position. Okay. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other is, then if you do a mitzvah, so what have you given him? Again, hard to understand because it does seem contrary to so many things we've learned. Well, as a matter of fact, the Rebbe is now going to show us other aspects of Psukim and Chazal, which seem to say exactly the opposite. Ulifamim, sometimes matzina, we found shavedas adam yesh le hashpah lamayla. Sometimes we find that our avodah does have an effect above. Kedisa b'medrash, like the medrash says, ala pasuk va'ata yigdal na koyach adni. Now, pasuk in Shlach, story of the Meraglim. Yigdal na, it will become greater, the power of Adni, the power of Hashem. Shall yedei kiyum Torah v'mitzvahs, that through the performance of Torah and mitzvahs, nasa inyan da hagdola, we bring about the notion of the aggrandizement, making gadol, b'shem Adni, the name Adni. In other words, now simple pshat, the shem Adni is a shem of din. Now we pronounce Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, which is all about revelation, shem of Rachamim, but we pronounce that name Adni, Adnai, right? Without the O, I'm allowed to say it, don't worry, right? Adnai. Okay, so now, interesting enough, that's a word of din. It's really a word of concealment. So Hagdolah Shem Adni, because there is a name, Aleph Daled, right? There's the name Aleph Daled, which is the name of din, which is Malchus. So that shame is a shame of concealment. So the performance of mitzvahs brings about a Hagdolah of Shem Adni, meaning a greater revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. V'chein matzinu, we've also found, shal yedei heder avodah, through a lack of avodah, nasa chalishus kaviyachol. Now I notice the Rebbe says kaviyachol. Didn't say kaviyachol when he was talking about us not affecting the Eibishter. He says kaviyachol when he's talking about us, yes, affecting the Eibishter. So to speak. Nasa chalishus kaviyachol, so to speak, l'mayla. Kediyisa b'medrash, like it says in the medrash, ala pasek, sur yaladcha teshi. In Hazinu. Sur, my rock, yaladcha, your children, but it's really, your offspring. Teshi. What's the language? Teshi, mateshes, to weaken. The bezman she'ein Yisrael oisim etzenu shel makim, that in a time when Am Yisrael is not doing the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hainu heder kiyum Torah mitzvahs, a lack of the performance of Torah and mitzvahs, matishin, again the word kaviyachol, matishin kaviyachol, they weaken, so to speak, kayach gedula shel mayla. So we seem to have an effect. So this apparent contradiction that we do or we do not affect the Eibishter by virtue of our avodah. Now, simple pshat is we don't. So how can we possibly affect the Eibishter? the Eibishter, right? And yet there are actually Maimarei Chazal that say we do. And that's the Chiddush. Okay, so what does all this mean? So this paragraph sets forth the question that we have to understand. We don't usually do 2 full pages in a class, but I mean, they're very basic. Right? So we learn simple pshat in the pasuk. Then we ask the basic question: what's avodah? Why is it a 2-pronged question? Why is it that what you and I do is called avodah? Because the idea of eved adain isn't a relationship that is truly representative of our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need us, whereas the adain does need his avodah. He can't do what he wants to do without his avodah. The Eibusha can do whatever he wants. Doesn't need us. Doesn't need Ted Spheres. Doesn't need anything. Everything that happens outside of Atzmus, outside of the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that to be and not because it has to be. There's absolutely nothing that is absolutely necessary, including 10 spheres. There are only 10 spheres because the Eibishter wants them to be. There's absolutely nothing that is what's called mechuyev hametzias. It must be, except the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter himself. That means not light. Light is not necessary. The Eibishter doesn't want there to be godly light, so there won't be godly light. So there won't be godly revelation. It's not. It doesn't have to be godly revelation. There's godly revelation because the Eibishter wants to be revealed. If he doesn't want to be revealed, so he won't be revealed. Absolutely nothing that is necessary except one thing, Atzmus, the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that just is what's called Yesh Amiti, true being. has no reason to exist. It doesn't come from anywhere. It didn't begin at any time. Not only is it Ein Sof, which describes the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's infinite light. It's Ein Tchila. It has no beginning, which is much harder to understand. Light has a beginning. There's a beginning to godly light. Whenever the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that it would be interesting that there should be come into existence something called infinite revelation, so then light came into being, what you and I call light, not physical light, godly light. Infinite godly revelation. When did that come into being? When? At some point in non-time, God decided, that would be interesting. It was an explosion of light. Until that non-moment, it's the light. What is there? That's the Eibishter. He's not even a ma'or. He's not even a luminary. He decided to make himself a luminary. And then out of that luminary came or. So there's, so to speak, two levels in Etzem, so to speak. If you said that to an old chassid, he'd hit you, but say the way you do. There's Etzem, the Eibishter himself, who just is. Where'd he come from? He didn't. What's his purpose? Doesn't have one. What does he do? Nothing. Just is. Absolute being. Well, where did he come from? Didn't come from anywhere. Well, why is he there? Just there. Where is he? I mean, where is he? He created where? Right? Completely impossible. When the Zohar says, Leis Machshavah, piece of well, there is no thought that can comprehend him, that's that level of reality. The essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Atzmusa Yizbarach. His etzem. Okay, from that, and that etzem can also, we use the word function is really, but that etzem can also be a ma'or, a luminary, and from that luminary comes or. But that's already based on the ratzon, the desire of etzem. Why is there such a desire? No clue. He had a taiva for dir b'tachtonim. Why? What was there, so to speak, before that? God. Where did he come from? Impossible for us to understand. The only level of you and I that can connect to that level of reality is called emunah. That power of the soul called emunah. Intellectually, completely beyond. We can appreciate the fact that there is such a thing, but what it is, how it works, doesn't make any sense. And when you say you believe in God, what do you believe in? God, the creator of the world? I hope you don't believe in God, creator of the world. I hope you can explain very clearly, intellectually, how God created the world. It's not a function of emunah, it's a function of seichel. You have to believe God created the world. And I don't think a mechanic believes that the engine runs the car. I think he can explain how the engine runs the car. I can't. I believe engines run cars because I have no intellectual understanding as to how they work. Right? Okay. Are there still pistons? I'm not sure. Maybe there are, maybe there are. There used to be. For sure there used to be. That I know. Are there still? Don't know. Right? Don't know. Right? So it's all emunah if you don't understand it. But if you understand how a car works, not emunah, you understand exactly how it works. There's gasoline, and the gasoline has to be ignited, and that somehow produces energy, which makes the wheels go round, and away you go. And if you have an electric car, so it's something else. You have this big battery down there. Don't put your battery below, don't drive your battery onto the plane down below. If you're going to take your car in the plane, take it as hand luggage. Don't put it below, because you're not allowed to have batteries below. They'll explode. Okay. Having just been on 15 planes in the last 2 weeks. 15 planes. I counted them yesterday as I was on the last one. How many times have I done this? 15 planes. And one of them was Frontier Airlines. And I lived to tell the story. It actually wasn't so bad, Frontier Airlines. Ticket cost $19. Now, you don't get on the plane for $19 unless you go in your underwear, because everything you take on the plane costs money. Right? You see, so I didn't have a bag, but I had a carry-on. Oh, that's whatever. And then if you want to sit on a seat instead of on the floor, so that costs money. And so, but it still was. It was the only flight that went to where I wanted to go from where I was going. So it was an experience. Okay. Seder. Let's go. Acha inyan hu. The matter is like this. Now the Rebbe is going to explain it all. Why avodah? Do we affect the Eibishter or don't we? That's our issue. Ach inyan hu. First, the Rebbe is going to quote the Advanced Chassidus. The Advanced Chassidus is an early Kabbalistic work, pre-Arizal. His name was Moshe Pano, if I'm not mistaken. Kemuva b'Chassidus mi Avedus HaKedesh. The Shalah brings the Avedus HaKedesh. Now, the Shalah lived in Europe and then went to Shnei Luchot HaBrit, right? Shnei Luchos HaBrit. That's his famous sefer. Lived in Europe, he describes the experience that he and his friends had on Shavuos one night. They sat up and learned all night. There were only 9 of them. They sat up and learned all night. At the end of the night, they went to the mikveh. In the mikveh, they had a malach appeared to them and said, if there was a minyan, I could reveal secrets to you. So the next day, they told someone who didn't come, and they learned all night the second night also, and they went to mikveh, and the malach appeared and said they should go to Eretz Yisrael and learn Torah Sarizah. So the Shalah moved to Eretz Yisrael. To Tzfas. And so he quotes the Advanced Chassidus before. To Masha Amru Razal, that medrash that we saw, what does he care? So what level of elokus is that talking about? Because when Chazal say that we affect or we don't affect the Eibishter, so Chassidus is going to explain to us that what they mean is there's certain levels of elokus that are not affected, transcendent levels of elokus that are not affected by our Avodah, and there are certain more imminent levels of elokus that are affected by our Avodah, right? Because we definitely affect reality in Elam Hazeh. So those levels of godliness that are directly responsible for the existence of Elam Hazeh and the continued bracha and health, or chas v'shalom lack thereof, of Elam Hazeh, so those levels of elokus are affected by our Avodah, whereas there are transcendent levels of elokus that are completely transcendent of this world, and those levels are not affected. That's basically what we're about to say. Right? And that's going to be said in the context of having learned Basi Lagani. So that's going to be said that we learn Basi Lagani, so we learn from Atzilus down. So what's in Atzilus, there's 2 different levels of Keser of Atzilus. One's called Arech and one's called Atik. Arech is that level of Keser that is the source of Chokhmah, the next level of reality. Atik is a completely transcendent level of Keser. Keser itself, transcendent, as opposed to that aspect of Keser, which is the source of the next level in reality called Chokhmah. Right? So what's Keser? Keser is a makif, Seivev, right? A level of transcendent light that is too powerful to be clothed in vessels. Those vessels being the 10 spheres of Atzilus. It's too powerful a light to be clothed in those vessels. But that light is the source of the light that is clothed in those vessels. What's that called in Keser? That's called Arech. We'll see. What's Atik? Atik is a level transcendent of that. That's Keser itself. Transcendent state of reality. Infinite godly light. Can't be expressed in a finite form. Whereas there's also that infinite light is the source of a level of light that can be clothed in vessels and expressed in a finite form. That's called Arech. Right, in you, what's that? So basically, Arech would be Ratzon, will, superconscious you, but the aspect of superconscious you that is constantly, you're becoming aware of it in conscious you. You are constantly aware of your Ratzon. I want that. The Ratzon itself is superconscious, or subconscious, right? But let's call super, because we're talking about using it as a mashal for atik and atik. So the ratzon itself is something superconscious, which you have no control over. You can't not want it. You want it, it's there. Right? When you become aware of that ratzon, so now it's resonating in conscious you and you're thinking about it. So now you can make a decision whether or not you want to act on that ratzon or not act on that ratzon. Okay, fine, but that doesn't mean you have control to not want it because it's not conscious you. Right? You have control as to whether or not you're going to think about it, speak about it, or do it, because that is conscious you, but you don't have control over wanting it. Immediate control. Why? Well, because it's not conscious you. It's a level of superconscious you, but it's the level of superconscious you, which is the source of conscious you. Why are you thinking about what you're thinking about? Because you want to. Why are you saying what you're saying? Because you want to. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because you want to. So that want, that will, which is superconscious, is expressing itself in conscious you. Atik is a level beyond that you're less aware of. Generally, that's called, in terms of us, also in terms of Abraham, in terms of that's called tainuk, pleasure. Why do you want that? Gives you pleasure. Why does it give you pleasure? I don't know. It just does. I don't know why I get pleasure. Why do I get pleasure from some tastes and I don't get pleasure from other tastes? I don't know. It's just kacha. Now, some of that is nurture, but some of that's nature. And even the nurture I'm not really aware of. Just for whatever reason, they taught me to like this. Okay. At a young age, my parents made sure that I liked single malt whiskey. Sure. Something. No, they didn't. Okay, so we'll see that here and then we'll stop. The Mash Amar Azal. Now, first we're just going to see Kabbalah, and we're not going to understand any of it. And then the Rebbe is going to translate the Kabbalah into Chassidus. The Mash Amar Azal. I mean, we'll understand it because Chassidus is going to explain it to us. The Mash Amar Azal. What does he care? Hu al Adon Yochid. This is the one master, Shorish HaShorashim, the source of sources. Okay, now we said Atik, then we said Arich. We're going to write them on the board tomorrow, don't worry. That Arich is the source of Chochmah V'Tzilus. Right. So it's the source of the Ne'etzolim. It's the source of V'Tzilus. Right. What's its source? Atik. So this is the source of the source. Transcendent. Atik means uprooted. To uproot a tent. Yeah, take. It's uprooted. I mean, it's not connected to the world. It's completely transcendent. Al Adon Yochid Shorish HaShorashim, delay that level of elokus, lo yichbis le'klal. Mitzvahs don't touch that place. We can't touch that place with our mitzvahs. Va'amnam, however, letzarech hakoved lahashpia al haroshim ha'elyonim. Okay, was that? For the glory that affects the supernal heads, which means what? I mean, if you think about it, so if you know what it's talking about, it actually makes sense. If you don't know what it's talking about, it's very terse. But what is it talking about? Arich. What's Arich? So Arich is a level of lofty godliness that affects Roshim Elyonim, Chochmah and Bina. Supernal heads, meaning intellect. Liyached, to unite Rosh HaMachshava, the beginning of the thought, B'Seifei, with its end, the end of the thought being action. Tzarech Gamorhu, it's a great need. In other words, our Veda affects that level of reality very powerfully. Okay. Now that's going to mean Atik and Arich. We haven't said that yet. The Rebbe is going to say that for us in the next few lines. So there's a level of transcendent godly reality that we don't affect with our Veda, and there's a level of very, very powerful and incredible godly reality which we do affect. Now, Chazal tell us, and this is something that's brought in Chassidus, that when you do a mitzvah, you're meisif or ba'olam atzilus. You increase light in the world of atzilus. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Okay, well, we just said that. What's the source of the light that's drawn down into Olam Atzilus? We just talked about it. What's that source called? Not the source of the source, the source. I know we only said it outside, we didn't write it on the board, but what's it called? We haven't seen it yet. Arich. That's called Arich. So when you and I, what's Arich? Now we said Arich, we said is what's it? Right? Okay. When you and I do a mitzvah, what are we touching? What are we connecting to? Okay, but say it better, so I'll understand what you're talking about.
Hashem's Ratzon.
Kodesh Baruch Hu's Ratzon. Isn't that what we're connecting to? Oh, what's that? It's called Arich. Okay. And what does that do? So to speak, by pressing that button, we cause or to be nimshach, drawn down into all four worlds. So that all of Seder Ishtalshlus, that the Rebbe is going to explain at great length in the whole next page, that all of Seder Ishtalshlus, all of the whole reality of the four worlds becomes healthier and more lichtig, more enlightened, illuminated. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And that you and I can affect. Evidently, levels beyond that we don't affect. And so when Chazal say that we affect the Eibishter through our Avei, what are we affecting? We're affecting Arach. It's the Eibishter. It's Kodesh Baruch Hu. Right? What level don't we affect? A level beyond that in the Eibishter, a transcendent level of a Kodesh Baruch Hu that's completely beyond the world, and so to speak, not interested in the world. Are the levels of godly reality not interested in the world? Absolutely. If you think God's the creator of the world, so he is, but defining God as the creator of the world says God created the world with one thought. Pinchas, did you want to ask a question?
A little confused. There's will and there's Ratzon. Is that the
Same thing. Ratzon is just Hebrew for will. Sorry. If I don't translate a word that you want to translate, just blurt it out right away. Don't wait. Just say, hold on, whoa. Okay. Chazal tell us that b'machshava achas bara olma, that with one thought God created the world. In other words, all of space and all of time is in God's world one thought. Now that doesn't mean all of the space and all of time is now and then there's a new thought. No. All 600,000 years, 6,000 years of the world's history and 1,000 years of Immerse Mashiach, and all of that and all of space, that means the universe expanding into itself infinitely. All of that is in God's life one thought. He's very big, God. Okay, fine. So now, therefore, to describe God as the creator of the world, which is true, is like describing me as the guy that picked up the cup. That's true. But that's not a very sophisticated description, right? It is true that I picked up the cup. Can't say that's not true. So if you know absolutely nothing about me, there are no distinguishing features of me as opposed to anybody else in the room. We all look exactly the same. We all sound exactly the same. We're all sitting in the same spot. So then you could describe me as, oh, he was the guy that picked up the cup. Because there's no other way of distinguishing me from anybody else. So that would be an apt description of me. But I mean, in reality, it's completely irrelevant whether I picked up the cup or didn't pick up the cup, right? Okay. So describing God as the creator of the world is like saying I'm the guy who picked up the cup. It's true, but it's a rather incomplete description. Now, why am I saying all that? Just so we'll appreciate the fact that there's all sorts of levels of godly reality that are transcendent of God as creator of the world. Right? Yes, he created the world. That's true. And ultimately, interestingly enough, all those other levels only exist because ultimately you want to get down to the place where God's the creator. That being said, those levels are transcendent of that aspect of godly reality. Up there in the beginning of it all, up there in Atzmus, the essence of God, why? What did he want? A world. Okay, so all these unbelievable levels of godly reality exist between that place and a place called Arech. Why do they exist? I don't know, because God wants them to. They serve a function in the light coming down till it's ultimately ready to be the source of a world. But those levels are completely transcendent of that. Not connected to it. Can't be described in terms of it. They're part of the process, but they can't be described in terms of it. Okay. Where do you start talking about God as creator, so to speak? Arech. What do you and I affect? From there down. So we affect the world. Not just our world, all the worlds. 4 worlds. Atzilus, a world of godliness. Bria, metaphysical world, full of angels. Gan Eden Elyon, upper Gan Eden. Yetzirah, another world of angels. Also Gan Eden Tachton, lower Gan Eden, where the souls go when they leave this world, to one of those 2 places. And then Elamasiya, the physical world. Down here we are. It's us making noise. What's the source of all that? Arech. That we can affect. And that's going to bring about a level of light that emanates down through all the worlds and brings about a healthier reality in all of Seder Ishtalshlus, the orderly downward emanation of light through the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya. We'll write them on the board tomorrow. Okay.
This is not just inside one person. That would be as if to say that if I do Avodah, that affects everyone.
Affects. Not only does it affect everyone, it affects this whole world, and it affects worlds beyond this world. Even a godly world. So there is a level of God that's affected. Only because he wants to be. Seder. It's kind of him. To make what you and I do have absolute value. So we're not just spinning our wheels just to keep ourselves busy. It actually matters. So far, that's what we're saying. Okay, now we'll see that tomorrow. And tomorrow's going to get more difficult than the stuff we saw today, because tomorrow the Rebbe is going to explain how all of this works in Seder Ishtalshelus, and we're going to have to understand what Seder Ishtalshelus. So what are the 2 main components of Seder Ishtalshelus? There's something in Seder Ishtalshelus that does not exist above Seder Ishtalshelus. What would be in Seder Ishtalshelus that is not above?
Sphere.
Oh, okay, so that means Caleb. What is in Seder Ishtalshelus that is also above Seder Ishtalshelus? Or. Right, godly energy. What's or? Godly energy. It's not or. It's a mushal. It's a parable. Godly energy you and I call or. Light. It's not light. It's just God. We call it or. Because or is an incredible mushal for it. God created physical or so that we'll have an incredible parable to understand godly energy. What's unique about or? Most unique thing about physical or is that it demands that it be connected to its source, or it goes out of existence. The light on this page no longer exists. It's not that I captured it in there, right? This is in there. I got it. It's not or. The or on this page, not there anymore. Demands that it be connected to its source, which is why or is such a beautiful example of godly energy that energizes everything that exists. And were it to cease to be connected to its source, it would cease to exist. Therefore, it's just an expression of that source constantly. So what's the or that's reflecting off my hand? An expression of the existence of that thing up there. That's what it is. And if that thing stops being it, so then this stops being it also. No, and it doesn't have to be oral by hand. At least that part of it. Okay. We'll go further tomorrow.
Welcome back.
It's nice to be back, I must say.
We really missed you.
That's right.
I missed you guys.